And we are live. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to day 2 of the Webcomic Library Con, the last panel of the day. My name is Luma. I go by Z Them pronouns. I am the creator of the Webcomic Library, and I'm here with my two mods. I will let them introduce themselves. Yeah. So today we wanted to kind of, since this is kind of like the end of the con and we won and everything is kind of like said and done, we just wanted to sit down a little bit, talk about what the Webcomic Library is, what community building in general means for the webcomic community, and just kind of hang out and chat a little bit, see whatever people's thoughts on how things went were. PC Valley? Matt? Yeah? Maybe? Wait, hold on. Let me just. Whoa. How about that? Are we good?
Let's find out.
Can we?
The 7-second delay.
Hello.
There we go. Now we can.
Yeah, there we go. All right.
Yay!
So, do we want to go through the greeting one more time then?
We just had the same exact problem on the Kickstarter panel. We're fine.
Everything is fine.
Everything's fine. Hi, I am one of the other mods, Rennie, aka Rennie Player One. I make Kate Blast.
And I am Ray. I make the webcomic Overlord of Ravenfell, as well as On Empyrean High, which is not out yet.
But yeah, so we want to talk a little bit about community building and the experiences of Webcomic Library in pursuing that, since we've done a lot of work in various fields to try and get people together within the community to kind of just talk about comics and then learn from each other a little bit. So we do have a few questions that we already have kind of lined up that we're gonna take turns answering here. Which one do we want to start off with today?
Yeah, so I think one question is sort of how did the Webcomic Library get its start?
All right. So Webcomic Library, you have to go back a little bit because before that it's actually basically kind of like spin-off series that I started doing. So the original one was the Link Library. That was a much larger project where I was keeping track of all sorts of different things, not only just like webcomics, but I was keeping track of study resources, LGBT plus resources, and everything in between that I just found interesting that I wanted to save that I thought other people would enjoy. Eventually, I ended up people started asking me about like where they could find certain representation and contents, asking for certain types of stories since I was very enthusiastic about that in the first place. So I basically ended up taking the webcomics from that link library and making its own little independent spreadsheet. Yeah, it was originally an Excel spreadsheet of all things. So I basically put it on the spreadsheet and went, you know what? Let's just make a whole blog dedicated to this. And I will just make webcomic content. I'll post people's updates whenever I can, share resources, etc. And that started, what was it? November 26th of 2016. So as with this November is actually going to be the 5-year anniversary for the Webcomic Library.
Woo!
So from there, like we've definitely grown quite a bit. Like I started off with 200 links in here, or at least when I switched over, and then like now the public count I believe is around 1,882. So it's grown a lot. So I'm really proud of it. And we've definitely kind of expanded in a lot of ways that we kind of interact with creators as well. I mean, we have the Discord. grown out to other social media accounts to kind of promote comics there. And then naturally we have the con here. So that's kind of the story of where the Webcomic Library began.
Really cool. And if anyone has any questions in the chat on the Webcomic Library, please put them down. Ray is going to be gathering those up and shooting those out as they come in.
Yeah, well, so let's see.
So what are you doing right now on the Webcomic Library?
So to celebrate this marvelous occasion, I decided that I want to try adding a new tag that I've been needing to add for months. Like, it's not necessarily hard to put in a new tag into the library. It's just very tedious since I basically have to go comic by comic to find what I'm looking for. So
Chris,
what were you saying, Ray?
Christy asked what your favorite part of doing the Webcomic Library is.
Okay. So I definitely enjoy just being able to just like see people grow over the course of like all these years, because like a lot of these comics, like you kind of like see like their first update. So like it's fun to see like how like creators have grown over the years and kind of being a part of that in a way, just being able to catalog that process and just really being able to just like interact with people and kind of be part of a story without having to be directly involved. So I definitely enjoy that section of it. I also just kind of enjoy like being able to just read stories in general. I've always been a bit of a bookworm myself.
Okay, now now Shiza wants to know how many hours you put in updating and managing the library on a weekly basis.
Oh, that can kind of vary a lot depending on what I'm up to. Right now, I've been kind of keeping it to like the bare minimum of just keeping up with the updates for the comics I read right now. By the way, I do actually read a lot of the comics that are on here. I think I have roughly a little over 80% of all the comics in the library I've read at least once and I'm actively keeping up with. So that in of itself, I can go through at least 500 pages of content a week. And I could say like I put like at least like maybe 3 or 4 hours of that alone. And then you have like the social media management, Discord management, and setting up those meetings. And it can definitely kind of snowball a little bit there. So
all these questions.
I'm glad that people are curious. So yeah, like running Webcomic Library can definitely be, there's a lot of little moving pieces that go into keeping up with so much content. It's definitely a challenge, but it's one that I'm willing to take.
Claire wants to know how often you find webcomics that have the same exact title. This is actually making me think of when I had someone yell at me for having a comic of the same title, despite the fact that I started mine first.
Yeah, it honestly doesn't happen as often as you might think. There's a lot of comics out there, like there's a lot of comics that use the same keywords, that's for sure. Like Ghost is used a lot. Looking at you, Crispy. But like in terms of like comics that actually have like the exact same name, it doesn't happen as often as you might think. But it definitely does happen from time to time. White Noise.
Red String, I think I've seen 2 with that one.
Red String. There's another. Sure that there's a couple others in here. Nove. I had 2 at one point. One of them kind of disappeared on me and got deleted, so it's no longer in the library. But it's no longer accessible for people in the public side of the library. I do keep track of comics that have basically gone debunked. So I have a way that I can keep entries but not have them up for the public, because there's nothing worse than clicking on a link and then the link is broken. So I don't tend to show those off in the public side, but I do keep track of them on the private side if there's ever the off chance that it comes back, or if there's just like a little error and it comes and I just happen to miss it.
Mhm. Okay, so Shiza has two questions.
Okay.
What's the worst part of managing the library? And have you tracked any changes on the themes and tags people use to describe their comics over time? Has something gone from popular to obscure or vice versa?
So what was the first one? It was
What's the worst part of managing the library?
so it's probably just like the shared tediousness. Like it can definitely be a bit tedious in a lot of ways, which is kind of like one of my favorite things, but also kind of one of the worst things. So it's so. Oh, hold that thought. Well, it's like that's words. It can definitely be a bit frustrating at times to kind of like keep up with things. So like just trying to like add new tags and such, especially as the webcomic library is just going to keep growing and growing and growing. Like the time that it takes for me to keep up with everything just takes longer and longer as it goes along, and there's no sign of it actually shortening up. Yeah, it's exponential growth, is what I'm saying. But there's also the fact that just like trying to keep up with so many comics can definitely be very frustrating, because sometimes I have like I'll be following a comic and I'll be keeping up with updates, and then for some reason the RSS feed code changes, so I don't get those updates, and I just assume that it's dropped off the earth. And then I look, and then I do a bit more digging, and then I find it in a completely different place. 100 updates in, and it's been so long that I have to start from the very beginning if I want to get back up to date. So that can be definitely very frustrating. And especially with some of the more obscure tags that are a bit harder to keep track of, like LGBT, disability, content warnings, that can be very hard to keep track of, since I have to keep up with those update to update.
Okay,
And
I guess
then
that leads into the second part of Shiza's question on the changes of the themes and tags that people use over time.
So in terms of tags, like I feel like we've definitely been like, I feel like I kind of caught the like webcomic community in a weird state of flux, where everybody's, at least on the American side of things, have been slowly transitioning to app-based comic platforms. So seeing how like that kind of changes how people approach comics in the first place is definitely very interesting, because like I have like a lot of comics that started like they're on their own independent site, and then like over the years like more and more of them seem to be like either mirrored on apps or they're just app only at this point. So it's very interesting to see how that kind of develops over time. In terms of tags, like I feel like a lot of the base kind of categories don't change it around a lot. So every once in a while, you might see like a spike in like mermaids, or say,
Or like the current
yeah,
spike on Tapas is villains.
yes,
Or
the
isekai.
isekai. The world has turned into an RPG, and I have to fight my way to the top. That kind of thing.
Dude.
That seems to be more specifically, I tend to see more trends in like the Korean side of things, at least from like ones that are being taken over from like, say, like I think Advanced Fair of Tutorial Tower is one of them, where like you have like that kind of like those kind of themes that seem to be like kind of coming over from Korea. It's like it's kind of surprising when you like really look at it, because like you see like you the idea that like a lot of like things in current like trends in the American market seem to be like kind of getting transferred over from from Korea, and then like the American audience kind of picks it up from there, which is quite
Yeah,
interesting.
I think it's so interesting on, especially I think with webcomics in general, on how much that international like blending almost has occurred, where um you have like a lot of like traditional print strategies or things that would work in like Korea or Japan that haven't traditionally worked in the United States and vice versa, where you see a lot of webcomics like traversing those boundaries. And like honestly, I you could probably attribute the current manga bubble and anime boom currently in some part to webcomics to 10-15 years ago.
Yeah, it's fun. It's very interesting to see how like all these like little different pockets of the webcomic community can just kind of ripple over to other parts, especially when you consider like the larger actual just general comic community as well. Because like people kind of pick up stuff from like the general comic graphic novel groups and then like kind of replicate that in webcomics and vice versa. So it's like they're also like it tends to be a lot more interconnected than you might think.
Okay. The Blue Dragon wants to know, do you do this in addition to full-time work, and do you have suggestions for juggling all this work?
So I'm also so essentially right now I am a part-time worker and I'm also a part-time student. So I've been juggling quite a few hours while doing all this stuff. This is basically kind of like my hobby at this point in time. I do basically my current plan, at least in terms of college stuff, is I've actually been really wanting to get into actual library science. And now what kind of scope within that field, I'm still kind of figuring out. I know what I like to do with the Webcomic Library. I know I like connecting with people. I know I like catalog entry and all that good stuff. But it's just a matter of figuring out where the best place for me is at this point. I've actually been kind of on a bit of a job hunt as well, trying to find a good footing in that field as well, so I can actually try actively being a part of it and not just doing what I'm doing right now with the Webcomic Library.
Okay, and Shiza wants to go, have you considered providing library services in a wiki sort of format in which people would provide content which would then be reviewed by the librarians? So kind of like TV tropes or something, I imagine.
Uh, I've definitely considered that. Uh, like I've definitely considered like the idea of having a bit more of like a Wikipedia kind of setup where people. I think I see a lot of pros in that, and I also see a lot of cons in that. But the practicality of what I'm doing right now is that since I'm keeping such close track of everything, uh, keeping track of people constantly updating stuff can be a bit much. At least having like a lot of other hands in the same pot, so to speak, and just a lot of creators like interacting. And I think that's both a pro and a con, since I have a lot more control over what people see, and since I'm also dealing with a lot of LGBT content, it's also a worry of mine that it can end up being accidentally doxxed over time, and I think it'd also be just a lot harder for me to keep up with overall from what I'm doing right now. I'd like to try something like that eventually, where I have a bit more of like I can like more like recommend comics uh, based on like what you've searched and whatnot, and have like an actual fully independent site. But I'm not at that level yet where I can really code that in, if that makes sense. There's a lot that goes into the coding side of things, I know, for like a lot of like this kind of database management.
All right, and Shiza also wants to know, do you notice geographical and demographic differences between countries?
Uh, it can vary a little bit. Like the most obvious one is South Korea, because you see a lot more of those trends when it kind of trickles down to the American audiences. So you kind of see like those little trends in different genres and such. But it's a little bit harder to track on an international basis, just because a lot of things are hidden behind VPNs and language barriers for me. I'd really like to know if there's other people like me who are kind of trying to keep track of databases on an international level. I'd love to be able to like interact with somebody like that someday and just kind of like compare notes on like what our communities are like and where they kind of interact.
So cool.
Okay, and Crispy wants to know, how do you three manage keeping up with the community?
So for me, it's like I'm the only. Well, Rennie and Ray help me out with a lot of the Discord stuff, the community-based tasks like Discord and also the con here. A lot of the actual like social media management and the database actually fall on me, since we've kind of opened it up a little bit. So Ray and Rennie have also been kind of helping out just a little bit with keeping up with Twitter, but I'm usually the one that's kind of scrolling through trying to find content to share with other people.
Yeah, as for me, I just watch a lot of people on Twitter. I actually follow several community-based accounts, especially when it comes to finding comic gigs and such, that I often cross post in the Discord for people that are looking for opportunities.
Yeah, a lot of the Discord side, at least for me, is a lot on the development of events and just making sure that everyone's getting along, and mostly like trying to find ways that new people can interact and talk about their work in a way that's productive and that they can learn. Because I think the biggest thing with the Discord server itself is it's a great place for people to learn and grow and like get feedback in a low pressure environment. And I think that's really wonderful. So that's where a lot of my focus has been on. And I think that it's a lot of these different things are able to make the song and dance go on. And if you want an invite to the Discord server, please DM Luma Ray or I, and we can see about getting you an invite.
And Crispy also wants to know, do you feel you need assistance for managing and collecting the data?
In terms of like upkeep with like keeping up with like submissions and such, uh, like I definitely need help with that. I do have a submission set up. If you look, I have a little link tree in our links section. If you go there, then there's actually a whole submission setup. So that way you can actually directly give me information and pictures to use to add into the library. So that helps me big time. I really do appreciate when people reach out to me to help me add their comics to my overall library setup. It means so much. In terms of actually like keeping up with updates, it's one of those things that, how do I explain? It's hard to be on the same page about how you keep up with things, at least in this kind of setting. Like I've tried kind of inviting people on before, like some relatives to kind of like help me just with like basic page setups, but I found like trying to keep up with how they count pages versus how I count pages can kind of differ sometimes a little bit, because I have the experience to know where to find that kind of more accurate count. And there's also the fact of just trying to find somebody that has the time to really dedicate to this, and that can be in of itself a little bit difficult. Finding people to help you kind of like co-moderate any kind of community space. Like I'm very lucky that Rennie and Ray are both very experienced in terms of moderation and more than willing to take the time to help me out. But just trying to find the right people to do that, who you can trust with that, is a lot more complicated than you might expect.
Yeah, because a lot of the stuff that seems to go on at least the library database side is it's a lot of metadata, and like I have a bunch of friends who are librarians as well, and they go on and on about about the consistency of the metadata and like they didn't catalog this consistently, and now I got to redo it to make it match and make it talk to what I have, and it just sounds like a total pain in the butt if you don't have someone that you can just mind meld with.
Yeah, it's like you really have to match up with somebody quite well to get this done to the level that you really want. And I'd like to get to that point one day where I can really trust somebody with this, but I'm not at that stage quite yet. It's something that I kind of like constantly look out for, but I'm not quite there yet.
Okay, and Shiza wants to know, do you have any particular future plans for the Discord server, Twitch, or Twitter?
So the Discord server, I think we were going to be talking after this con. We've been kind of taking a break this month from fully keeping up with events there, just because we've been in the middle of running this con here. So I think like we were going to talk about like rearranging some of the events and kind of imagining some new stuff to add, because we would like to kind of encourage people to interact more in general. Like I think like we've definitely had some success with like getting people to talk on voice channel, but we've been doing a cafe style, and I think people enjoy that so long as like we can really get it kickstarted, and that can be sometimes a bit difficult. So we need to try and find a way of kind of helping people be comfortable with streaming anytime, anywhere. So that's something that we need to figure out the best way to kind of encourage that in our community. And then we have like the reader discussions and the creator discussions, which we kind of plan out in advance, and we plan all the questions. And I've been trying to branch out and try and mirror those in other spaces. So I haven't quite found quite the sweet spot space that people really enjoy interacting with that quite yet. But I'm hoping that I will.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. And then I know at least on Twitch, yesterday and today have been very successful. So I know we don't have any solid plans for the Twitch yet, but we're definitely looking at this and as something that we might want to do more often, because we went from how many subs are we up to now?
Well, we started before, like when I started the streams yesterday, we were at 31. So I think we're up to at least, what, 67? Last I checked. I can't quite check right now, so.
69.
Nice.
Nice.
Okay.
But yeah, like a lot of people have been really coming around to kind of talk with us, like coming around to like just kind of check out what we're doing. I think people have generally enjoyed what they've been seeing, and I'm really interested to see how people interact once we put it on YouTube as well. I'm wondering if people will enjoy kind of being able to reference back to those conversations. So I'm hoping that I think this format definitely works. Since this is our first year doing this, we kind of kept it very bare bones in terms of tech and how many panels that we're doing, so we can kind of take notes on what works and what doesn't. So that way we have some place to move up if we decide to do this next year, which I think is kind of like in the plans at this point, for sure.
That leads into Claire's question: what topics would you like people to cover on another Webcomic Library Con?
Well, I think definitely having something. Like I think a lot of like the basis of like what we covered this time were definitely very fun. So I'm like the what was it? Publishing in an online space was one of those ideas that I've had in the back of my head for years. So it was really exciting to kind of see that come to fruition. And I think people enjoyed like the Magical Girl panel and all the panels in general, I think.
Yeah.
So
I know the one that was on our list that we would have loved to do this year, but we just couldn't fit it in the schedule and couldn't get the right mix of people, was a panel of Make It Gayer. We were thinking trying to talk about LGBT representation in webcomics. So since that didn't make the cut this year, I think that's going to be a good push for next year.
Yes, we definitely want to get something like that rolling. I think like there's so much LGBT representation within like just like the webcomic community in general. Like I think we can come up with it. We just didn't quite have the time to really pull the people together to make that happen this year.
Yeah, and I think next year we might also do pitches for panels too, whereas this year was a little more curated and crafted.
Yeah, we are thinking about sending out a survey on the Discord so people can give their feedback on like suggestions for the next con. Um, so okay, and oh, here's another
Yeah.
question. How did your team end up meeting? Was it through a search for assistance or just the right time and right place?
So
I mean, it was the previous webcomic updates.
yes, I was basically there's another webcomic blog, Webcomic Updates. Uh, I think it was actually run by. I think they formerly went by. I can't remember what they're currently going by. I think they changed their name since last time, but it was another person, and then you also had Peyton, who was actually in the publishing in an online space uh, panel. So they've been kind of like reblogging updates, and they actually got quite a bit of traction. So they started up a Discord, and then I joined, and I ended up kind of becoming a bit of a moderator. So I think Reddy and Ray both joined that Discord, so we kind of met up through there. And then basically, as things progressed, both the people who were running webcomic updates kind of stepped down. So I ended up kind of running the show, but I wasn't entirely prepared with what I knew about the Discord and such. So we tried to kind of like remedy some things as best we could, but we ended up just deciding that the best option to really make this the best thing that we could make it was just to start from scratch and create the Webcomic Library Discord, which I think has worked out for the best overall.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
definitely got the
sometimes it's
vibe.
nice to have your own space
Yeah, it's like it was a
with
bit
your.
yeah, it was a bit odd trying to keep track of that since it wasn't really my space. Since it wasn't really connected with what I was doing, I just ended up being a moderator, and I wasn't expecting to basically become an admin. And since I didn't have anything to do with anything else on the webcomic updates setup, I have no like harsh feelings about it. It was just kind of one of those circumstantial things.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But I think like overall we ended up on our feet after all that. So I think we've really been able to create something neat from the idea. So that's kind of how we kind of met each other. Like once we decided that we were going to start a new Discord, Crispy was actually one of the moderators I upgraded during the webcomic updates section, and then we added on Ray when we started concocting the new server. Crispy has since stepped down since they have their own stuff going on, and though we're still pretty close, so I still appreciate their company.
Yeah. Unofficial fourth mod.
Yep, unofficial fourth mod.
Consultant.
Consultant. Webcomics consultant.
Yes, comic consultants.
Okay.
10 out of 10.
And another question is, do you think the reader discussion format can be transported to these other spaces like a book club?
You know, I think we've kind of explored the idea of doing a book club, but the thing with doing that in the spaces that we're currently kind of inhabiting is that it's very creator focused. So like the Discord and such has ended up being a very much a creator space, but not so much a reader space, which sounds like it wouldn't be that big of a problem at a first glance. But when you have a lot of people who are trying to promote their own content and have very little time to really like read a lot of
Oh man, I
comics,
am
then
behind
it
on so
becomes
many comics.
yes,
Well,
it's a very common thing. Like I see a lot of comic creators like try and get into like creating community spaces, and I think that's wonderful that people are trying to create those spaces. Though it's also important to keep in mind that trying to keep I think like when you start creating a community space, you're very liable to kind of like when you're initially starting out, you kind of combine that comic time with the blog and your webcomic stuff together, but you think like you have like that kind of passion to really make it kind of come through, but you can kind of fail to realize exactly how much time and work and detail really goes into doing this sort of thing.
the worst part about making a webcomic is not having time to read webcomics.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I see like a lot of people kind of struggle with that, and that's something very important to consider if you try any like if you're trying to make like a community blog or a database or a Discord or anything like that. Like make sure like you have that time and you schedule it accordingly.
Yeah,
So
and
you
I
can
know that at least as far as the book club front goes, I know that's very time intensive. And one server that used to do that really well, pour one out, was the Comic Tea Party, where they used to have monthly book clubs or comet storms. But keeping up momentum for those sorts of things is very difficult, just because, as Luma mentioned, there's a big time component that
Yeah, and it's
requires
like
a big commitment.
I was like a part of that Discord too, and I love the idea, but I never had the time to go sit down and read a lot of the comics on there unless I had already read them.
yeah, it's like if I can find a way to really like get readers interacting with the library, interacting with creators directly, like in that like blended space, then I think we can make it work. But I don't feel like we're quite at that space where we can do that at that time. I think trying to focus on like just trying how do I say this? Trying to focus on like making content like this, where like this is kind of like mutual ground for both readers and creators on this Twitch space. Though I definitely know that we have plenty of creators in chat right now that are enjoying themselves for sure. But it's definitely a challenge trying to figure out how to make readers interact with community spaces, because I feel like a lot of reader specific community spaces end up being, say, like podcasts and more blogs based spaces. I do want to still get back into blogging for sure. Because if you
I
know,
think blogging would be a very good direction to go.
yes, like I
Yeah.
actually used to do a lot of blogging when I first started out because I was on Tumblr. So I would do master posts, and I would have like I'd have a general theme, and I would have a whole bunch of comics in a list or that theme, and I'd add all these different links so people could directly interact and see what's available to them within that uh, topic. And I'd have like a really wide variety of content from like various spaces that you might not even heard about. And like I think that was a really nice way to get people together. But unfortunately, why I stopped that was, for one, Tumblr changed how they set up uh, their, what is it called, uh,
Algorithm.
algorithm. So essentially, if I add any link, any at all, even if it links directly into the same Tumblr space, then it will not show up in tags. Period. Now I think that's
And
changed. I
this is
think
why you need your own site.
yes, I've been waiting to make a site for a number of years now, but the other thing is just like my current world status, as it were, because like I've been trying to get to a space where I can really like live independently, and I've been working and I've been doing school, and I just don't have the time to really fully dedicate to having an independent space where I can really make that happen. I've been actually debating back and forth a lot on whether or not I just want to go ahead and make it and just post sporadically and whatever happens happens, or if I really want to start it on the right foot and make sure that when I have the time to really do it, then I do it well. And that's a really hard decision for sure, because I've missed master posts and interacting with people on that in that method a lot. But I'm hoping that one day I will figure out the best balance for that so I can bring back that content to you, the people.
Yeah. We have about 5 minutes left, so if anyone has any final comments or questions, get them in.
See, I think your own site would be useful just because you can rely less on the algorithm for Tumblr and such, whose focus is keeping people in the site, and not
Yeah.
clicking on links and work with Google's algorithm, which is all about having people find the things that they want, which is what Webcomic Library is all about anyway.
Yeah, and it also gives me more opportunities to just kind of branch out since I would have my own independent space. I don't think I'd be moving my entire archive onto an independent space quite yet, just because there's a lot of programming that goes into that, and I am, suffice to say, a noob in that regard.
There are some sites you can do where you can just get a plugin for like a basic database and start going. Like that's how a lot of Wikipedia sites and such run as well. So we could try to see if we can find options to ease that transition.
Yeah, it's just trying to get it up to like the quality that I have here on Tag Packer. Tag Packer is actually free, by the way, if you're ever interested in doing something like this.
Yeah, I have a friend who runs the slash pile that swears by Tag Packer as well. It's a great tool.
I actually learned about Tag Packer through the LGBT Webcomics server and so, like watching their stuff because I followed them on the slash pile on Tumblr, and then they moved over to Tag Packer. So I was looking at it, I was like, well, I don't know how hard that'll be to set up, but I guess I'll give it a bit of a go because at that time I was just using literally a Google Doc Excel spreadsheet to do all the things that you see here, which was chaotic. And I don't know how I managed that, but I did. Well, I know how I managed that. I was stubborn. But yeah, it's definitely like one of those things like trying to transition any kind of space, especially as large as this, over to a different area is definitely going to be a bit hard to manage, but I think I can eventually do it. I'm just not at that stage quite yet.
I can help transfer as long as I know vaguely what I'm doing.
Yeah. I think I'd mostly just be trying to transfer all these tags because when I originally transferred just like 200 comics from my Excel spreadsheet onto here, it took me 6 weeks.
That's and a that loaded was before, question, Crispy.
And that was only half of the tags that you see here, like less than half even. Like there's so much.
Crispy's question is, what is your favorite webcomic?
Oh God,
that's really hard. Like it feels like that is a hard. Like it really depends on like what your categorization is, because like categorizing it is can help out a lot. Because like if you're talking about something that I would recommend, like anybody, no matter whether it be somebody who's read comics for a really long time, or somebody who's just starting out and is looking for something that's kind of like a little bit beginner friendly, but kind of shows you what the webcomic community can do. Like that's, for me, has always been The Property of Hate. Because there's just a lot of stuff that goes into that. Like there's a lot of beautiful art. There's a lot of fun, witty humor in there. And also a lot of, like, if you look a bit deeper, you see like a lot of world building. You kind of understand like, if you're more experienced, like how much work goes into like doing all the backgrounds and keeping everything abstract, but still like definitive. So it's like, I think like The Property of Hate is a wonderful way to like start getting into comics overall. Just kind of like understand like what kind of goes into this kind of medium and what it can do.
My answer to this one is to answer one that's like not anyone in this chat is Oh Human Star by Blue Delaquante. It recently finished up, I think, earlier this year, and they're doing reruns. But my God, it's such a beautiful comic with great trans representation in queer media, and just I definitely cried at the end. For anyone who's read Oh Human Star, go out there and read it. You will cry.
Yeah. What would you say your favorite comic is, Ray?
Oh my God. I don't know. I really don't. I will say that one that I really enjoy would probably be Unsounded, though. Because it's a feels train, and it has so much body horror, and I love that shit, so. But It's also one of those things where my favorites are always categorized in what I feel like at the time too. So that can change like from day to day.
Yeah, trying to come up with like at some point I should probably just make like a master post of like what comics I'd recommend people who are just starting to get into webcomics and want to know
Yeah.
kind of like
Oh, like
explore
a
like what
beginner's
exact
primer.
yeah, it's kind of like a beginner's primer, like kind of showing you what the webcomic community can kind of successfully do, like how varied the genre can be.
Yeah, I do that with like anime for some people that are like, I want to get into this, and I really like maybe this one popular, like super popular anime. So I'm like, oh, hey, have you tried this one? Maybe you could do like some bookstores do, and like, just give like a basic premise of something and just link it to people, like the
Yeah,
blind book date.
yeah. Well, that was kind of like the concept behind the master post because I could just kind of drop things in and then go. So though that though the link gathering could definitely takes quite a bit of time because some people are not as good about having their links in accessible places than others. So
At which
mass
point
post is
Luma just sends us around with baseball bats to get your links out.
I have a specific love for Linktree and cards and such because then I can just click on all the links and then I know exactly where everything is. Though sometimes I still forget things and it pains me greatly. It's like an onion. I start off with like the actual site link and then I look to see if they have any social media accounts and then I look at those social media accounts and see that they link to other social media accounts, so I click them. And then I see if there's any social media accounts on there that weren't listed on the second one, and then we rinse and repeat. And then sometimes I end up on Google trying to figure out if there's any place I missed.
I think we have time for one more question from the chat.
Okay, Shiza is going, do you have any idea of the percentage of comics that end up on hiatus or that just disappear?
Okay. I can actually give you the exact stats here. Just give me a second to do math. Because I actually do, like, in my little update tag here, let me see, update schedule, live for me. Okay, so let's see. So right now I've got 243 out of 1882. So generally speaking, I'd say, like, the not updating, basically not updating basically covers official hiatuses, unofficial, or official long-term hiatuses. I don't tend to count short ones. Short-term hiatuses, discontinued, and anything that I keep underneath my private tab, though you can't see that part here. So generally speaking, I would say, if my map is correct, it's about 20% of all the comics I have in the library right now are on some form of just not updating. And that's not including complete ones either. Let me see
What
if I
about
got my...
weird comic?
So that actually makes up... Let's see. So the official count, if you include all the comics on private, is 200 or 2030 right now. So I have a little over 100, like 150, that aren't listed on here.
Not gonna lie, I'd disappear my first comic if I could remember the password.
Yeah, and it happens for a lot of different reasons, you know? Like some people, like, they just grow and, like, they just aren't, like, they aren't passionate about their comics anymore and they don't want to have people kind of disappointed that it's not up anymore. I've also seen a lot of cases where people just don't think people are, like, there's actually readers for their comic and they aren't interacting, so they think, and they just kind of get very upset and then they decide that they're just gonna scrap it because it was a bad idea, which actually happens more often than you think, and it's honestly very sad. But I kind of understand that on some level because, like, you don't, like, I think reader interaction is a lot like very much underappreciated from like just a reader side, because you know that like there's always going to be somebody reading that might be reading every single update, they might be watching every single post, but they're a bit of a lurker, so they don't really interact. And like then like creators like will think like, oh, maybe you just haven't, maybe there isn't anybody here at all.
Yeah.
And like it's on one side, like I understand both sides of that situation. And I think at the end of the day, like don't assume that nobody's watching. And that's kind of like why I kind of started the library in the first place and started making that public, because I wanted to show like if nobody else is reading your comic, I am. At least on some level. Like I'm actively trying to keep track of it. I want to promote it, and I want to show my appreciation in this way, because I'm not too much of a commenter myself, as you probably have seen.
Really good for the community too, and it's just I know the stats out there of like 1% of all readers will comment. So like if you get like one comment, you probably have like 100 or 1,000 people reading who are just lurkers.
And you also have to consider, too, that just because they're not saying anything to you doesn't mean they're not talking about it, too. Because it's like they might tell, like, their friends, hey, you guys should read this, and not actually feel like they can talk to the creator as well.
Yeah. But yeah, there's like so much, like there's so many different ways to kind of improve that interaction, and it's just a matter of getting people to start talking. And even if people aren't talking, you never know if somebody's still there.
Well, since we're running low on time, I have one question, and I know it's a question that I'm sure many people would like to know is, how do you get in the Webcomic Library?
Yeah, so I said this earlier in the stream, so I'll say it again now. So if you're interested in becoming part of the Webcomic Library, and I haven't added your comic yet, or even if I've added your comic and there's something not entirely correct there, I have at the bottom of this about me is a link tree, and if you go there and you'll find a webcomic submission form. So you basically follow those steps, you email the webcomic library at gmail.com, and I will add that stuff to the library as soon as I can. So I'm always kind of keeping track of my email, so I tend to update pretty quickly unless there's other circumstances keeping me away. Like I have one right now. I actually have a submission in my inbox right now, but I haven't quite been able to get to it just because I've been in the middle of streaming right now. But basically that submission form goes through all the tags that I use. So like main character, when your comic technically speaking started, what the current page count is, etc. Like just submit it and I'll look it through and I'll do my best to kind of promote your work through my work here. And if you just want a little bit of an edit, then you can just email me directly at webcomiclibrary.com, at gmail.com, forgive me. And then I'll try and update things as soon as I can as well. But if you're a reader and you still want to support the library, but you don't necessarily have a comic to kind of help out with, like just following along and trying to support other people, trying to get involved with the Webcomic Library's projects, that means the absolute world, because that helps us be able to spotlight creators. And if you really, really want to help out with the Webcomic Library in a way that might be a little bit more out of reach, I do actually have a Ko-fi set up for the Webcomic Library. You'll find that in the links as well. All that money goes towards kind of helping out with creating content like this. I commissioned somebody to make all the promotion art, Jasmine Simone. She helped create all the promo stuff, including the background that we're using right now for the Twitch channel. She's been fantastic. Yes, she's been fantastic. This is the first time I really commissioned anybody, so like I'm just like absolutely thrilled to be to have all this stuff to help kind of really bring it home and kind of bring everything together. And then also donations go towards helping me buy comics because some comics aren't free to read. I've been slowly trying to get more print and downloaded content so that way I can kind of bring more attention to the more indie stuff that I curate.
Yeah, you should check if you're in the chat. You should check out Jasmine's webcomic Black Sunshine. It's
Yes.
very cool.
Yeah, and then if you're wanting to buy new comics, then I also do have an Amazon and bookshop available for the Webcomic Library. If you buy books through those links, then part of the amount that you pay goes right back to the Webcomic Library, which is quite a big help. Like every penny counts. I tend to do this mostly by myself. I've been mostly doing this for essentially free. Like, though I naturally just spend money on comics to add to the library and such. So any little bit helps trying to make this thing come to life. And I generally appreciate people like coming by and just, viewing and just hanging out with us and talking. Like, I also want to take a moment to thank all the panelists that we've had over this stream. Like, everybody's like we didn't know if this was really going to be something that people would be interested in, if people would be even interested in participating, but we were really rocked with how many people were like, I asked people directly and then how many people just said yes immediately.
Yeah.
Like that, and people just kind of took the reins and created something absolutely amazing here, and I'm so grateful to be able to just meet all these amazing creators in some capacity and be able to project what they've been able to do. And I also want to thank you too as well, Rennie, Ray, because y'all have been so helpful through this process. Like, this would not happen if I didn't have the extra helping hands. Like, would not happen. Like this was like one of those ideas I had like at the very beginning when I first started running Webcomic Library, but I've never really had the platform to really do it, and I didn't really have the people who I could really trust to help me make that happen. But you two are, and I am so grateful for your time
no
and your
problem at all.
I appreciate everybody who's been willing to help make something like this. Like, if I knew what I was doing now was what I'd be able to create 5 years ago, I would have called myself a hack. Like, this was like decades. Like, I don't think I've mentioned this detail throughout this, but I just want to toot this horn really quick. The Webcomic Library that you see right here, all of it is in the Library of Congress.
Woo!
It's documented in the Library of Congress as part of the Webcomic Literature and Criticism Division. So it's basically helping kind of keep track of what the webcomic community is up to and kind of like the history behind it in real time. And that just mind boggles me.
Yeah, preserved forever.
Yeah, it's like, it's really something else to know, like, what you're doing is something that people think is worth saving. And I am so grateful for that. And it really wouldn't have happened without the people who are willing to reach out and make this, help me create this.
Yeah, it's such a fantastic resource that you've created, so you should definitely be extremely freaking proud.
Yes, I am so happy and so proud, and I'm glad that we've gotten to the end of this con, and we actually did it. We've actually gotten through it.
Woo! Yeah, and thank you everyone in the chat for coming as well. We will definitely be doing this next year, bigger and better.
Yes, like, this is only the base. We only have one way to go but up.
Proceed to phase 2.
Yes. And it's gonna be great. And we have so many plans on like what other projects I would like to create for you guys and ways that we can interact with you. So I really hope you'll stick around and see what we can create together.
Yeah.
But thank you all so much again. Thank you for coming to the Webcomic Library Con, and we hope to see you in other spaces around here real soon, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you all so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.